Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Diversity and Inclusion track at TiEcon. They've been extremely generous with their time and their efforts, and for that, I'm truly grateful. Laura, Swati, Gomati, Dennis, and Sid, take a bow. They're not here in person because they're in the background working the systems. So thank you, guys. All right. To get us started today, it's my privilege to welcome Gavriella Schuster to deliver the opening keynote address. Gavriella is a corporate vice president at Microsoft Commercial Partner Team. She has over 30 years of leadership in digital and cloud transformation roles. In addition to being an exemplary technology professional, Gavriella is also a vocal advocate for gender equity. She was recently awarded the Athena Global Leadership Award for her advocacy on behalf of women in IT. She's also a founding sponsor of both the Women in Cloud and the Women in Technology Network. Do check out her recent TEDx talk on gender equity. Gavriella, it's so nice to have you here at TiEcon 2021.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Rajani. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. All right, over to you, Gavriella.
Thank you. You know, I heard a wonderful quote the other day from Mala Yousafzai. You never know who will stand with you unless you stand first. So take a stand. That's what I hope I can help inspire you, and this whole track can help inspire you today. You know, it was 6 months ago that I took a stand and I gave my TEDx talk where I shared my idea about how we can achieve gender equity in the technology industry. And I'm still getting messages about it. I talked about my experience in a conference room about a year ago, sitting across from 4 men with 2 men to my left and 1 man to my right. I'm the only woman in the meeting, and it's loud while everyone is brainstorming on the topic of the day. I have something to say, but there's just no lull in the conversation. It's a little intimidating, but I raise my voice and I join the conversation, sharing my insights on the topic. And I'm met with absolute silence, as if I was wearing a less empowering version of Harry Potter's invisibility cloak. So I tried again. This time, I lowered my pitch and slowed down my speech. First, talking about my experience on the topic and what brought me to this room. And then I shared my ideas. The second time, I was heard. I don't know about you, but I am tired of being the only woman in the room with no allies. When I was writing my TED Talk, I knew that was something millions of women around the world have experienced. It was confirmed by hundreds of emails and messages that I've received since my talk. All of those messages have been inspiring, but at the same time, quite discouraging. One woman wrote, "I've been the woman in the room who wasn't heard. I've been at that meeting when the male client replies to my question by speaking to my male colleague and not me." Another woman said, "I have worn that invisibility cloak that you're talking about for a long time. I used to think my time would come to take it off, but it never came." This is the reality that we're up against. I've had so many women come forward and say, "I thought it was just me." Well, I'm here to tell you, it's not just you. It's the culture, it's society, it's systemic biases that we need to overcome to create the change that we need. I was just reading some new numbers from the National Center for Women in Information Technology. Women make up 47% of all employed adults, but as of 2019, hold only 27% of computing roles. Of the 27% of women working in tech, Asian women make up just 5%, while Black and Hispanic women account for 3% and 1%, respectively. That has to change. All of this, despite the fact that the growth of STEM jobs has outpaced the growth of overall employment in the country in the world, growing 79% since 1990. Despite national conversations about the lack of diversity in tech, women are disproportionately missing out on this tech boom. And it's about to get much worse because of two factors: the pandemic, which is driving women out of the workforce at an alarming rate. As a matter of fact, the World Economic Forum said last month it will take 135 years to get back to workforce equity if we don't do something. And also because of the wave of digital transformation. 70% of all companies are going through a digital transformation. That means technology is becoming their products, their services, and their operations. High tech is being infused into every industry: retail, manufacturing, financial services, even agriculture. And you see that when you go shopping or banking, or when you reach for entertainment. You reach for technology first. And that, in and of itself, that's not a bad thing. But what is bad is that the jobs that are being displaced disproportionately impact women and people of color. And that is a trifecta of badness, because by percentage, it means there are fewer women in technology, there are more jobs in technology, and there are more women being displaced by the technology. This is the crisis we're in. We must act. This is not the workforce that you want for your daughters, your mothers, your wives, your sisters. Trust me, I know. I've been here for the last 30 years. I thought by the time my daughter was ready to enter the workforce, things would be dramatically better for her. Unfortunately, my daughter's 22 years old now, and in fact, things are worse. So we need to do something about it now. We need to change the status quo and change the culture that allows this bias to persist. And it's going to take all of us coming together and collaborating to flip the narrative. All of us, all of the men, all of the women, all of us together. We've made some good progress. A few years ago, I was having a conversation with some colleagues about how we do something bigger globally to support women who feel alone in their respective organizations. How do we support them and provide them with greater opportunities? We each committed to each other to become agents of change, and we formed the Women in Technology Network, which now supports more than 6,000 women in 53 countries around the world. And I'm very proud of that work. But we're still falling short, well short of the status quo. Around that same time, I was having coffee with a couple of friends who, like me, were all too familiar with the struggles that women face. And during that conversation, we agreed that one of the biggest hurdles to gender equity is access to business opportunities, leadership positions, and venture capital funding. As you know, the door doesn't just swing open for women in tech. Historically, when we knock, no one answers. It was from that conversation that the Women in Cloud organization was born. Through the WIT network and the Women in Cloud, we've been able to reach 20,000 women around the world. It's a great start, and I'm proud of that momentum, but it's not enough. We need scale. We need each and every one of you to be a force multiplier, because we need to turn that 20,000 into 8 million. That's what it will take to get to gender equity in high tech. And while that's going to be a monumental task, it is not impossible if we all work together. And that's why I developed what I call the Become framework. When I was preparing for my TED Talk, I thought, I need something that's memorable and actionable, something that becomes a beacon for all of us to follow, something that helps men become allies, that helps men and women become leaders, and that helps all of us become agents of change. So I came up with 4 simple steps that every one of us can do every day, hopefully starting today. I want to take you through each of these actions and what they mean to me, and I want to share some real life examples that are proof we can make this happen. Connect, outreach, mentor, empower. Let's talk about each one. The first one is connect. This is about making intentional connections with women in your network, reaching out and giving women access to you and everyone in your network. Yes, I'm talking to the men who are listening. I see a lot of examples of this through emails and messages from women and men saying they thought they were doing a good job connecting with other women and opening their network to others, but now they know they need to do more. The second action is outreach. This is about examining your recruiting practices, your hiring practices, and your supplier selection practices. When you post a job, do you screen out candidates or do you screen in for diversity? I wrote a LinkedIn article in January that's a perfect example of this. In 2016, the IT company Innovate was in financial trouble. And when they looked at what was going on, their CEO, Thomas Asper, discovered it wasn't a problem with their business model. It was a culture and gender equity problem. Only 20% of the company's workforce was women. So he made a commitment to change their approach to recruiting. And instead of hiring based on skills or expediency, they focused on hiring for quality. They put a priority in hiring a person rather than a number. The approach has doubled the number of women in the company. And Innovate is now one of Microsoft's largest partners for Dynamics 365 in the United States. The next step is mentorship. I would not be where I am today without the many men and women who have mentored me along the way, who have shared with me the value of their successes and their failures, and helped me avoid those invisible tripwires and unwritten rules of business. When you mentor, you blaze a trail for others to follow, and you give back. In fact, one of my mentees, Isa Mendez, shared with me recently that our sessions changed her perspective dramatically. She was entering the workforce looking for a job in tech, and we connected through a Grace Hopper event. She was frustrated because she wasn't getting any offers, and everyone told her she wasn't really ready for the job she was applying for. I told her, don't listen to them. Listen to yourself. Believe in yourself. If you think you're ready, be bold and don't take no for an answer. She then applied for an internship program with Microsoft and moved to Redmond from Brazil and is absolutely shining now. Isa works in my organization and is amazing. The fourth action is empower. The most impactful thing you can do for another human being is to empower them, to create an inclusive environment, to sponsor them. According to the Boston Consulting Group, organizations with diverse leadership teams have 19% higher profitability, greater levels of employee engagement, higher levels of customer satisfaction. And that makes sense, right? Because a diverse leadership team is creating products and services that better reflect the diversity of their customer base. Those are the 4 words I want you to remember today: connect, outreach, mentor, empower. I know many of you are already doing these things, but I'd like to ask yourself, could I do more? And most of the time, the answer is yes, we all can. It's through intentional actions like this that we can make a difference. We need to be the change. I urge each of you to consider what commitment you can make. What are your intentional actions and commitments in the days, weeks, and months ahead for the sake of your daughters, your mothers, your wives, your sisters, yourselves? The time to act is now. We need each and every one of you to make a commitment to help a woman be seen, to help a woman be heard, and to make the invisible visible. Please make a commitment today to become an agent of change and to help a woman take off her invisibility cloak. Thank you.
Gavriella, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
I have a few questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you. So you work at Microsoft. I mean, it is an ocean out there. And I would imagine, in a smaller company, women could potentially find it easier to kind of navigate the organizational structures and, be seen. What is your advice? What are the top three things that women in tech need to think about as they navigate large tech companies?
What I would say is foster your allies and your mentors. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Socialize your ideas early and often because it will help your ideas get better and help you be heard and create that followership within your organization. And when you enter a meeting, sit at the center of the big table and take up your space.
I love that. I love that. Own your space, right? That's wonderful. You mentioned the importance of having allies. How have you seen men you work with being allies, and what did that look like?
Well, in that conference room I talked about, where I felt invisible, if one of those men had asked me what I thought or repeated what I said and said, "Hey, building on what Gavriella just said," it would have created the space in that conversation for the other men to hear me, building on my ideas and crediting me. That is what inclusive behavior is. It's about listening to understand, not listening to respond. It's about engaging proactively, sponsoring, and supporting all the voices in the room.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gavriella. That was inspiring. The one thing that I've always believed, and I heard in your talk today, is be the change you want to see in the world. And I hope that's a good lesson that everybody takes away from your keynote. Again, thank you so much for joining us at the Diversity and Inclusion track at TiEcon 2021. And have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah.